Maya Codex. Today we're going to look at a little different kind of Maya Codex. It's called the Popol Vuh. But you already now know what a Maya Codex is. It is a folded book as opposed to a scroll or a book like we have. It has wooden covers and paper that is made out of soaked bark, and that's often painted on. You've seen these pages from the page 8 of the Dresden Codex, and you can see the different versions of them, and you see how there's an image with glyphs that explain that image. You now know that they often draw an event, add the calendar date, put people's names and the place names all on one single glyph so that you can have an entire story told in one little square. This unit we're going to look at the Popol Vuh, which is a really interesting book. This information comes directly from the Encyclopedia Britannica. I'll read right from the encyclopedia. This book was written by a Mayan author sometime between 1554 and 1558. And he wrote this book in Quiche Maya. There are many Mayan dialects. One of the dialects is called Quiche Maya. It was written in that dialect, probably in Guatemala. In the book, it talks about the creation of humankind, their gods, the origin and the history of their own people, their lineage, and the chronology of their kings. So it talked about their own personal identity through their kings and through their lineage, and their larger identity within the cosmos of the gods and the creation of humankind. One of the things that's interesting about any of these books is that you're not going to take the time to write down every single thought like we do today on social media. You have a thought, you put it out there. Instagram, tweet, whatever you want to do. You just throw all your ideas out there because it doesn't cost you anything. If you wanted to make a book 500 years ago, it cost you a great deal. To make one piece of paper, meaning you had to strip the bark off a tree, you had to soak it, you had to pound it down with rocks, then you painted it over in white, and then you drew the images on, the glyphs, and then you had the page of a book. It used to take months to write one page of a book. If you knew that it was going to take you that long, you're only going to write the most important thing that you need to communicate on that page. You're not going to write down any old thought that comes to mind. So when you look at these Mayan books, they were really important events. They only wrote down the things that were most important to write down. Now, 150 years went by, and that book was found, the original Popol Vuh was found by a Spanish priest, Francisco Jimenez. And what he did, he could speak Mayan, and he could speak Spanish. So he took that book. It was probably in bad condition. Imagine a book that was 150 years old, and he wrote that book down in Mayan. And what he did was kind of interesting. He wrote the Mayan on the left page, and on the right page, he translated that into Spanish so that more people could understand what was being said. And he wanted to have a bilingual book. So it's kind of a cool book. It's got Quiche Maya on the left and Spanish on the right. And this book is really, really important. Remember, there were 30,000 Mayan codices, all burned but 4, and all of that knowledge was lost. So what happened in 1554 was a group of really well-to-do Mayans, probably old royalty. This was only 50 years after the arrival of the Spanish, and these guys learned how to speak Spanish, and they continued to be important people even under the Spanish rule. And they wanted to write down for their children and their grandchildren what their understanding of the world was before the Spanish got there. So this is the closest we can come to having an understanding of what the Mayans thought before the Spanish arrived. Now, there was 50 years of Spanish influence, so the book, the Popol Vuh, might have changed a little bit, different than what it would have been before the Spanish showed up. But this is a very, very interesting book. And it talks about these two guys. These are twins. They're called the hero twins. This guy's name is Hunapu, and this guy's name is Xpalanque. And they have all sorts of adventures. Through their adventures, we learn about where humans came from, where the earth came from, what life is like after we die. In fact, they make a bunch of noise here on earth, and it makes the gods underneath in the afterlife angry. So these guys go down and decide to play a ball game with the gods underneath the earth. In fact, their father had done that before. He lost the ball game to the gods. They chopped his head off, put it on a tree, and hung it there. So these guys went down to play those same gods, and they wanted to beat them at their game. And so through this series of adventures, we learn about the worldview of the Mayans in this book called the Popol Vuh. As we look at these most important things that we need to communicate and pass down one generation to the next, the two most important ideas are the origin of the world. Where does everything come from? Is it the Big Bang? Did God create it? Did it just show up? Has there been multiple universes before our universe? Where did this all come from? It had to come from somewhere. These are things that are really fascinating, and humans have wanted to get their head around this and grasp these ideas forever. And then the second big idea of life is what happens after we're gone. And these aren't morbid. They're they're deadly important. They're super important for us to kind of understand where do we think about these things. There's not a ton of options. Do we just lose consciousness and that's it? Do we become reincarnated into a human or a different kind of animal life form of some sort? Do we go on to live with a god or gods? How do we envision the afterlife? And both of these questions aren't just abstract questions that don't mean anything. Much of our activity here on Earth is based on our understanding of how we view where everything came from and where it all goes. If you're an atheist and you don't think there's any God, it just showed up, you're going to act a certain way today. If you think there are gods, you're going to act a certain way today. If you think there's one, again, you're going to act a certain way. So these are really good questions, and I want us to take a minute as students to get our head around these. Where are we at today? And I want you to write one page of where you think everything came from and one page of what you think happens to us when we're gone, after we die. So that's our assignment for our culture for this unit, to make 2 pages of a Popol Vuh type document for our own self, something that would take more time to think about than just a simple social media post. I want you to take some time to think about these things, write them down. There's no judgment. There's no right or wrong answer to these things. Where do you stand now in relation to these ideas? So again, have fun with this.